Hi, and welcome to Lights of the Round Table. My name is Susanna, and we have Brooks Agnew back. Brooks is a master engineer, and I say master of engineers with due respect because he knows not just electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, you can really talk about, and he's done a lot of projects in many different industries. He's also a winning author, 7-time or 10-time winning author of several books. I've read a couple of books, and I implore anybody he has some really amazing ones. One is a trilogy that I like, which is Birth. And the other one that I was reading, this one is for personal growth. Remember the future. And guess what? Today we're going to talk about asteroid mining. And he also wrote a book about that a few years ago. So you were a little bit on the forefront or frontier of everything before asteroid mining was a buzzword like it is right now. So thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much. It's good to be here.
Yeah, and you have I saw one of your presentations, I think over the summer, early summer, about asteroid mining, and it was I loved it. I thought some of the graphics you brought onto the table, so I hope that you can share that to me. But what brought you to learn about asteroid mining? What is it that sort of piqued your interest?
Well, as a child, I guess I already or always knew about it. In 1968, I know that goes back to the last century, but uh, I was a pretty good math student in school, and I got interviewed by the local newspaper who came to interview me. And I don't remember all the questions, but one I do remember is the reporter had asked me, "So what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I didn't even hesitate. I said, I want to be an asteroid miner. Well, we had not even gone to the moon yet. So this kind of took her a little bit off guard. I don't remember what her reaction was, but I know she didn't have any more questions after that. Uh, it's something that was natural for me since the earliest uh, interest in the space program. The I guess the thing that really got me is Earth is such a unique planet in the cosmos. We have looked, well, thousands of light years in every direction, and we have not found another planet like Earth. Earth is kind of our spaceship. It's traveling through space around the Milky Way galaxy. But the unique thing about this planet is that we can live on the outside. We have an atmosphere on the outside of the planet. We can sail the seas and fly in the air and grow crops and live our lives on the outside of our spaceship. And yet we have this uh, I guess I call it a light memory that's older than worlds that tells us as humans we're not really from here. We're from somewhere else. And we've been here for so long that we have forgotten really where we came from. And I honestly think that many of the people alive here on the earth today are actually spirits or light sources from other worlds that have now been born here on this world. And some of those people are kind of still out of step, maybe one or two generations in on this planet. They don't really blend in, they don't really fit. They have a memory set that has not prepared them for mortal life on Earth. And we see that. We see it all the time. And when I go to the live events and I meet thousands of people from all around the world, literally all around the world come to these events, they all tell me stories of how, as a little kid, they kind of had distant memories of some other world that wasn't anything like this world, but this world's so much better. And yet we have this curiosity. I was going to call it a drive, but we really have a genuine human curiosity of what it's like out there. How do we, build a ship that can protect us from the hazards of space and go re-explore the cosmos? And I don't think we're going to give up on that. I think we are pretty good stewards of the earth, generally speaking. And now we're looking to the moon because the moon has now presented us very valuable resources that can help us here on Earth for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. But beyond the moon are other planets in our solar system, which just intrigue us. My one of my people that I look up to is Elon Musk and his company SpaceX, and they make no bones that they are planning to go to Mars. Of course, that's a distant goal, and it's part of a big project that NASA has, a very forward-looking project called the Gateway Project. And the Gateway Project includes several projects inside of that, like Artemis and other subsets of that, which is to develop what we call cislunar space. This is a space between Earth and the moon, and then around the moon. And that's going to take a couple of decades or three even before we're comfortable landing people on the moon and having activities and maybe even a colony on the moon, and then launching from the moon because it's way less expensive in that lower gravity to other planets like say Mars. Now Mars is something completely different. It's like going to the Sahara Desert except at about 40,000 feet altitude. And although we can survive at 40,000 feet or 39,000 feet here on this planet, uh, we need help. We need oxygen. We need training. We need extra clothing. We can only stay for a few hours and then we have to come back down. Mars is different. Mars is not only a very thin atmosphere, but it's also a very unforgiving landscape. There's nothing growing, there's no surface water. So everything we have to survive as mortal humans on Mars, we have to send there first ahead of time for years. And then we have to go there with people. And before we run out of air and water and food, we have to assemble all that stuff into a life support system. And that's going to take some time. It's really forward thinking. And largely, I think the first few ventures to Mars are suicide missions. If those people do come back to Earth, it will be a miracle.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Mars. I just saw a documentary or a mini documentary a few days ago suggesting that Mars probably has water underneath
Yeah, we're
its
pretty sure that it
crust.
does.
Yeah,
I contributed some technology that got a launch engine in 1996 that we
yeah.
sent to Mars and did some under the surface spectrometry, and we did discover liquid water under the surface. Now, we don't know how deep it is because they only sent part of the technology. It really takes two antennas on the surface in order to tell the depth, but at least we discovered that it's there.
Yeah, but Brooks, don't you find it a little interesting that there was a rover sent over to Mars? Something happened to the rover, and yet it seems to me that there's more information coming through and suggesting that they know a little bit more about Mars than they're giving it to the public.
Yeah,
Um,
that's all. There's always that. I mean, we said Spirit and Opportunity, which were incredible projects that lasted way longer than we thought they were going to last.
right,
After NASA was done with them and JPL was done with them, they reverted back to Caltech as the caretakers, and grad students kind of ran programs in those rovers until they couldn't run anymore. And then now we have Curiosity and we have other even airborne rovers on Mars. And yeah, I think we've discovered a lot of things, but as enthusiasts and followers of the project, we lose faith in the integrity of the project because of some of the information that's been smudged out or withheld or deleted. And we wonder if they have some, ulterior motive as to why they're doing that. Same as they
right,
did with the moon.
right. So maybe you could say it for me. Let's put it this way. Mars is not red, is it? Not the
E-
atmosphere, actually. They do have a blue sky, from what I understand.
I mean, it is from here because it reflects the sun's that spectrum back out into space, so we
Yeah,
see it
but
as a red planet. So if it is red, it means it's full of iron oxide on the surface, which means there are minerals we can work with.
exactly. And so, what did you think since you brought up Elon Musk? It's unbelievable that we forget that he started this way back in 2008 with a Falcon. I think it was one of his first pet projects to space, right? I think
Yeah,
that
and
that was
Falcon has
ultimately.
done really, really well. It's a reusable capsule. It is very robust, certainly performing better than Starliner from Boeing. Uh, and the thing I like about Elon is that he has enough success monetarily to build his dreams. Now, many of us had those dreams, 50 years before he did, or 40 years, or 30 years before he did, but we didn't have the means. We didn't have the money to make that happen. In the early days of the space program, it was all run by the Air Force. It was not really what we wanted to do as space explorers because we kind of felt very early on, and I was one of the parties that was involved in drafting the Peace in Space initiative that went to the UN, that we should not weaponize space. But we've been doing that since 1968, and we're not the only ones that have weaponized space. So that's basically what has been running the space program for a long, long time. Then Space Command was created, which was also run by the Air Force, and it became horribly corrupt. I mean, just laundering literally hundreds of billions of dollars. Nobody knew where it was going. Rumors of a secret space program and all kinds of other things about reverse engineering alien technology, building ships that are way faster and anti-gravity drive, and all these rumors came out because of all the money they were going through. So when President Trump set up Space Force, it was to move past all that corruption in Space Command, to get out of the Pentagon. And the officers that he drew into the program not only were enthusiasts, but they were not corrupt. They were focused on the mission, and the mission actually began to move forward. And Space Force has three primary functions. Of course, one is to facilitate the exploration of space by letting, or at least encouraging, private technology providers into the system, which Elon was all about. He was the main, I guess, check writer, if you want to call him that, that allowed a lot of these small companies to get into the game in the first place. He bought stuff from them. He was very smart this way. The second purpose is to make sure that as these small companies become successful, and some of them only have like 8 employees or 20 employees, some of them more, some of them less, some of them are publicly traded, others are privately held. They are getting to a point where the original investors, the founders, the inventors, they're aging out and they want to sell out. And so when they sell, or when they merge, or when they're taken over, hostile takeovers by other companies, all that technology that they built has to be amalgamated into the new company. And that means that all the hardware has to be common. It has to be open source, like with Linux or with Zigbee boards or with
Right.
Arduino technologies. And that way, the new company can take over what the old company has done. And this is all good. It means that we don't take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. We take 2 steps forward and then 4 steps forward because we have that innovation from the previous company. And then the third function of Space Force is to do generally for space what the US Navy has done for the oceans of the world. The US Navy, since the early, or I would say the late 18th century, early 19th century, has been dedicated to keeping free trade on the seas open. It wasn't always that way. The British controlled everything. I mean, everything that's why the sun never set on the British Empire. So there has been extreme amount of competition for the ocean trade on Earth. And Space Force was created to make sure that that competition stayed open in space. So there was no piracy, there was no quote unquote government that could take over all of space, because obviously, and I think you know this, Susanna, anybody who controls the moon will control the Earth.
Yeah.
So we
Well,
want to make sure Space Force was created to make sure that control stayed open. it stayed open. It wasn't a government that was controlling it. It was let's just call it a consortium of technology providers that kept it open.
Yeah, yeah, but it's interesting, the history of how it has evolved from government projects to enterprises and commercial enterprises right now, especially lately, because there has been a lot of little, like you said before, just a few minutes ago, smaller companies. Elon has been purchasing, creating. It's amazing how he got away with it, because we're talking 2008, and so he was able to do all of this entrepreneurial, let's say, foresight, have and money, and do all of this with so much government tape. But we,
Huh. He
and
doesn't always get through it though. He still
yeah.
gets bossed around by the FAA and bossed around by NASA, but he has a vision and he wants to accomplish it.
Right, and I think he has evolved also. And I think the commercialization of space is an intriguing one, because, like he said the other day, I don't know if you noticed, when he was talking to Trump, they were sort of throwing little keywords: moon bases, and sustainability, innovations, and how I don't think people perhaps understand how the space can actually propel the fourth revolution, or even the fifth revolution in innovation, um, because there's so many challenges. And then,
Yeah.
from mining to blockchain, I mean, the type of communications and the quantums. I mean, even solar warden came out. It was part of it was a buzzword on even mainstream media. What was it, a month or two ago? Everybody was talking about solar warden. I'm going like, what is this solar warning coming out suddenly? I mean, it's been secret, and suddenly it's coming out to the open. So I'm not sure if this is a little mini drop of public disclosure of what's coming in the coming soon in the near future, as where we are as humanity, and countries, and evolution, and all sorts of wonderful projects. I just wanted to have your take on all of these little sort of ideas that I just popped out to you. Throw it your way.
Well, I mean, in times past, with respect to the space program, it was more a competition for how much government money you could attract into your company, because NASA was the one writing the checks, the taxpayers were the ones providing the funds, and there was really no return on any of the investments. What do we get? A few rocks, some space research, some innovations being done, but the technology really didn't start to take any leaps toward practicality until Elon Musk said, "Wait a minute, why are we using hydrogen peroxide? Why are we using disposable rockets? Why don't we use reusable rockets? Why don't we use methane, and liquid oxygen? This is something that could generate plenty of power. Why are we making composite spacecraft that
Right.
break apart in the atmosphere and kill everybody? Why don't we make them out of stainless steel? Why don't we, you know, make a better spacesuit?" These questions really started to change the industry, but it was still it was still a competition for government money. Where Elon makes about $14 million for SpaceX profit every single time he launches something into space. But that's still government money. It's still taxpayer money, or some company that's paying the bill. Where's the return on investment? Okay, we get satellite TV, we get GPS, we get weather, we get communications, things like that. But in 2006, there was a project that launched to the moon that was a kind of a clunky spectrometer. Okay, it was designed to sample atmosphere particles around the moon. Now we know the moon doesn't have much of an atmosphere, but it has one. And so this spectrometer was scooping up particles off the atmosphere of the moon and analyzing them. It was doing fine. It was gathering information and we were learning stuff from it. But it ran out of fuel, some kind of fuel leak, some kind of miscalculation. It did not have enough fuel to finish the mission. So as we always do in these teams, we get together and we work the problem. And this particular spectrometer was built in two parts. One had a spectrometer body, and the other was the rocket body, which had run out of fuel. It's basically a big, giant, empty can with some motors in it. So they decided to blow the bolts because this is the way we'd let it decay back into Earth's atmosphere if it ever came into Earth's atmosphere. So blow it into two pieces and let the pieces burn up in the atmosphere instead of one big chunk. So they decided to blow the bolts as a new mission and drop the rocket engine onto the moon. Just drop it like a big chunk of metal. And then fly the spectrometer half of it through the cloud, the big plume that's made once this artificial meteorite strikes the moon. And we were watching it from Earth as well with telescopes. Now, they could have dropped it anywhere, but they decided to drop it on the south polar region of the moon. We call it a Schrodinger's basin. It would be
Mhm.
like Antarctica here on Earth. And particularly, there were some very large craters. One of interest was known as Shackelford Crater. So they decided to drop the rocket motor into that crater because we really couldn't see into it because it was dark. It doesn't get sunlight ever. It's surrounded by mountains and it's very wide. So they decided to drop the rocket motor into that crater and then fly the spectrometer through that plume. Now we watched the plume from Earth, but it's 260,000 miles away. It was an oblique angle. There wasn't enough light involved. We could not get any infrared data from it, so we couldn't tell what was in it from Earth. So we had to rely on the spectrometer body to fly through that cloud. And that's exactly what happened. The spectrometer flew through, did the analysis, sent the information back to Earth, and then crashed into the moon itself. And that changed everything because what we found in that plume that we made with this artificial meteorite was water, which we did not know the moon had in large quantities. It actually has a lot of water, like 6 times the water that we expected it to have. And it's chemical water, so it's very easily extracted. And the other was a compound or a molecule, actually an ion, that we have very rare here on Earth, and that's helium-3. Now, helium-4 we have on the Earth. We fill our party balloons with it. We fly lighter than aircraft with it. It's very stable. It doesn't hurt anybody. Helium-3 is like a neutron. So it has 2 protons, 1 neutron, and it is made by the sun. And it has been accumulating on the moon for billions of years. And it's filled up these craters on the South Pole because they don't get any sunlight. They're sitting there at about 25 degrees Kelvin, frozen in these craters. Helium-3 is a very unique ion in the sense that when you fuse helium-3 together in a fusion reactor, like a tokamak or something, you get 2 energetic protons, not neutrons, so there's no radiation, 2 energetic protons, which we call electricity, and energy, lots of energy, enough energy to keep the reaction going. And if we are successful in fusing helium-3 together, we create what's called fusion rocketry. And we could actually replace the fuel sources in all of our nuclear power plants by changing the reactors to handle helium-3. And in that one crater, just in Shackelford Crater, there's enough to run the power needs of Earth for 10,000 years.
Imagine.
Obviously, this changed everything because now the gold rush was on. Everybody was trying to get to the South Pole of the moon to capitalize on that crater. So India sent rovers, Russia sent rovers, we sent rovers. Everybody tried to send rovers, and only China has actually been successful in landing a rover close by that's functional, that's sending back some information. In fact, it just sent back samples that it took from the soil. They arrived and landed in the desert in China. They've been analyzed. Uh, but now you have a profit situation Now you have something that could create energy, cheap, free, clean energy for the entire planet for 10 millennia.
Right.
Everybody's going for it right now.
Right. And not only that, it's one of the points that Elon did drop it, and it's sustainability of our planet, not tapping into our resources as much. And that's why, going to space is one of his pet projects, because like that, it's rare earths. There's also rare earths. And I wanted to discuss a little bit, because with that helium, with that energy that you have now, imagine you can set up not only moon bases, but you can not only refuel even rockets right there in space, but you can start setting up what I would say camps. You can have even mining expeditions, where you could actually outsource some of the asteroids probably that are in the lower orbit of Earth that you could tap on. And I think,
We have Trojans that are in what we call gravity wells laying around the Earth that we could exploit. But you make a very, very good point about a lunar colony. Um, and Elon has his own ideas about a moon base. He mentioned it during the talk with Trump. He also mentioned that Earth has probably 500 years of fuel left. So sometime in the next 500 years, we need to make a decision, or 8 billion people are going to run out of energy unless we start burning up all our trees, which, by the way, has happened. So unless we find another fuel source, which I think the Earth has given us about all it's able to give us. And now it's time to look beyond Earth for other fuel sources. The colony on Mars, and this is the case that I make in my book, Asteroid Mining, The Future of Energy. The colony on the moon, I'm sorry, has to be built inside the moon. It has to be built inside the lunar, or not the lunar, but the lava vents of the moon, because we cannot build facilities that can survive on the surface of the moon. Micrometeorites and solar radiation and temperature swings around 300 degrees one way and the other. It's too dangerous. Inside the moon, things get stable. You can pressurize it. So you can have a colony that does not really need a spacesuit to work. You could live and breathe on the moon. And the nice thing about the moon is it's only a day and a half away. So if
right.
you get in trouble, you break your arm, or you get pregnant, or you get sick or something, you could be back, on Earth by Monday and live your life out.
Or we can have a whole setup over there up, no, up in the moon, and not need to worry. I mean, the distance is not that far, when you think about it, and when you have the means. I mean, because was it 2 years ago that even Amazon Bezos was after they were doing all these sort of space, I guess the next big thing, for those who want to commercialize. I think it was something to do like tourism. Obviously, I think tourism is just a little nice word, but I think there's more underlying projects there, and it's just a way to
I don't know if
have
many
people
people
like
want to do
adopt.
tourism at zero gravity.
I don't know. Who
If you've
knows?
never been at zero gravity, it's sort of like leaning your chair back too far and falling, or going over a real fast hump on the freeway at high speed. You kind of get
Yeah,
knocked.
but Brooks, I assume that all these environmental concerns, as far as our weight, gravity, and all that stuff, will be taken into account when it comes to actually living and set up camp or anything like that, or
Not
traveling.
living there, but
I
space
mean,
tourism. Yeah, I don't think that's going to work. I mean, space tourism, I think of, let me see if I can share my screen here. Let's see if it'll come on. Hold on a second.
yeah, sure, not a problem.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to share my screen.
Go ahead.
I don't know if this is actually, I don't think this video is going to play. Oh, it's just an MP3. Yeah. Well, I can just share my screen. I can show you a picture of it and not
Sure.
play music behind it. Let's see here. We want to share this screen here. Okay. So you can see this right here.
Yeah.
All right. This is a lighter than air craft. So above it is a huge helium balloon. And what this is designed to do is to take people into space, not weightless. You get to go up to about 140,000 feet, 110,000 feet, and look at Earth from space. So it's a pretty easy round trip. You go up and land in the same place that you took off from.
And whose concept is this?
This is it's called Space Neptune, and it is actually being built, and it is actually practical. People would pay, $20,000, $30,000 a seat to take this ride, and nobody's gonna throw up inside this craft because you have gravity all the way up and all the way down. So there's that.
Too flimsy for me.
Yeah,
I feel like I need something a little bit more solid. Uh, but yeah, why don't you, can you look for that presentation you did with the asteroids? Because what I wanted to say, I wanted to move forward to um, harnessing. I
oh,
mean, we are
how
talking about,
big the asteroids are, you mean?
well, there are companies out there like I wanted to say like the Astro Forge. I think they plan like
Oh,
a 2 year.
Transastra?
Well, Astroforge, I think they do mining, but they're closer. They're the lower orbital kind of asteroids or some sort of mining. They just go in. It's a 2 year plan. They come back, and they look they I think they're not rare minerals, but platinum based
Yeah,
platinum I think based.
Platinum is one of the asteroids that we've located. I'll share my screen again.
Certainly.
This
Um,
is what's known as OSIRIS-REx. So OSIRIS-REx was launched by a small company and some students, and it was powered by an ion rocket. So it went out to the asteroid belt, found an asteroid, landed on the asteroid, and it actually was able to, if you could see by this animated GIF, it was actually able to land on the surface of the asteroid. You can
but
see
you
that.
need to share it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're not sharing it yet.
I'm not sharing it.
No.
Okay.
There we go.
So you can see the OSIRIS-REx is landing on the surface of this asteroid. You see a lot of loose gravel. And that disk that you see gathered several grams, a couple kilograms of rocks. And that ended up in this, you can see this gravel here in it. This is the disk that was on the bottom of OSIRIS-REx.
Mhm.
And it actually came all the way back. They fired the rockets for 29 minutes. I'm sorry, 7 minutes until it was out of fuel. And then it ran at about 29,000 miles an hour back to Earth. And it landed in New Mexico. So we recovered it. And the interesting thing about this, the samples that we got, is we found a compound that really surprised us. It is a compound that is called, oh, I'm trying to remember the name of the compound now. But the bottom line is this compound is created when molten magma breaks through the bottom of an ocean and makes contact with the seawater. That's how this compound is created. And so the only way that this asteroid could have been created is if it was the part of some
See,
under ocean land on a planet that broke apart.
right.
And so that was a really remarkable discovery that we made. This is really fresh too. This is like just the last few months.
Incredible.
So
So
we
how
are
do
sending technology to the asteroid belt. We are getting information back. These are not hugely expensive projects, but they are achievable and and they're successful. We're able to get out there and back.
so how does one, I mean, I can imagine how does a company, a small company whose resources, financial resources are limited, how do they analyze whether or not there's something out there in space worth digging? I mean, how do you how do you decipher, or how do you see whether or not it has metals, rare metals, or anything like that without having to send a sample, like the rocket that you just showed me, the disk?
Well, we have sent probes out there, and we've actually located a lot of asteroids. We know where they are. They don't move much. It's rather static. And people have a kind of a, I guess, a misconception of how much matter there is in the asteroid belt. The entire asteroid belt is spread between Mars and Jupiter. It's sort of a missing orbit. And a lot of people have thought, oh, it was a giant planet like Tiamat and it was struck by another planet, and it broke apart. And it's actually not that big. All of the matter in the asteroid belt is barely larger than our moon. So the rest of the material from whatever planet was in that orbit is gone. It blew away out into space. So what is there is rather stable. And these rocks, these particles, are a long way apart. So it's not like in Star Wars where you're flying through an asteroid field and you have to avoid all these things. It's pretty easy to navigate around. And we have discovered we classify asteroids in three different classes: M class, C class, and, well, what are basically water or frozen methane. So the M class, of course, is the metal. The C class is the organic compounds, and then the water or frozen methane is out there as well, which, by the way, is very, very valuable out there as a refueling source. But the metal ones are a particular interest because they're gold, there's platinum, there are all these rare metals. And if we were to take one of those asteroids and move it back to some vicinity close to Earth, it would be worth quadrillions of dollars. Obviously, that's not practical. The more practical thing to do is to move the asteroid to Mars and use Mars as the base to harvest or process that asteroid.
So you don't think like 3D printing and trying to have some sort of floating moon, floating space type of environment near the asteroid? I mean, what kind of innovations, what kind of technology do you need to actually mine? Are we talking about actually throwing mines over there and exploding it and then catching it? I mean, how does this
Well,
work?
that's a good question. You asked me, how do they figure this out? They have dreamers. They have people that say, wouldn't it be neat if we could do this? I hate to bring it up, but there was a series, a science fiction series that was based on a video game. And the video game was called The Expanse. And actually, the video game designers made so much money on the game, they decided to make a movie or a TV series out of it. So they did. It was called The Expanse, and it aired on, I believe it was the Sci-Fi Channel for one season, and that was it. Sci-fi does not have a big audience. It didn't make enough money to continue with it, so they discontinued it. But the fan base was very adamant that they wanted to see more episodes of The Expanse. So Amazon bought it. Now, when Amazon bought it, more resources, a lot more resources were poured into the series. And the series developed into 5 seasons that were just incredible. We're actually waiting for a sixth season to come out. But one of the things that came out in the movie, and by the way, the physics is fantastic in this series. It's really hardcore science fiction fans. But one of the pieces of technology was this. Now, this is a craft that they built that attached to an asteroid in the belt. And they moved this asteroid in orbit around Mars with this craft. This was really fascinating to watch. So, is it practical? I'm afraid so. It is practical. And now you have all the raw materials that you may not have on Mars available to make a Mars colony not only profitable, but practical.
Right. I mean, it doesn't take too much to move those asteroids, would it? Well, depending on the size. I mean, they're little ones, and I think, do you have that video where you show the different types of sizes of asteroids? Because it
Yeah.
really shows, it
Yeah.
really gives a view it gives a sense of to the viewer what the enormity is of some of these asteroids that we're talking that actually are thinking of being mined in the future, probably in 15, 20, 30 years from now, who knows. But actually, it's funny that you mentioned the expanse. I have a hardcore follower in the house.
Oh, great.
Because of the physics involved and sci-fi. Yeah, I guess it goes with engineering. What can I say?
Let me see if I can find that video. I know
But
what you're talking about. Uh,
yeah, it was really beautifully. You did a fabulous job in presenting uh, how the asteroids and the mining business and everything. And it
here
was
we
really,
I've got
yeah,
it.
good. Thanks.
I will share this.
Now we're looking at different sizes, and this is and these are all in the belt.
Wait, did you say something?
Yeah, I said, are these asteroids in the belt?
Yes, these are asteroids in the belt that we have identified. And by the way, Ceres is one of the asteroids that is in the expanse. They actually have a Ceres station. So that's, almost 1,000 kilometers in diameter. In fact, it's used in astrology as one of the bodies in the star charts. So it is significant in size.
Amazing. So I could imagine the commercialization, but not only here on Earth, but it could open new frontiers also for another new type of commercial
Oh, no doubt
trade.
about it. And that's one of the things in the expanse that you create this whole new, well, we actually sort of extrapolate our human dilemma into space as far as racism and all these things. We have, of course, Earthers. We have Luna, which is an old colony in the Expanse series. And then you have Martians, which obviously develop at 68% of Earth's gravity. So they're very strong on Mars, but not so strong on Earth. And and then you have this fourth class of people, which are called belters. Now, belters live their lives in weightless conditions. So they don't develop bodies that can support themselves on any planet. And they are exploited like almost like slaves by the UN, which, by the way, the UN controls the earth, not the United States or anything. There are about 20 billion people living on earth, and the UN and the Secretary General runs earth. But the belters go to war with what they call the inners, or the inside the ring, And that's the fascinating thing about the expanse is the conflict, the human conflict that expands into space.
Well, we hope we don't carry that over. I'm hoping that perhaps, I mean, I see some changes and maybe you can, I'm going to allude a few changes in NASA. I'm not sure exactly. It doesn't have the power that it used to have perhaps 10 years ago. It sounds to me that things have changed or are quietly changing, and so is everything else. And I'm just hoping that just like Elon, it's all about preserving humanity, is preserving Earth, is tapping into new frontiers, new innovation, but certainly with a different look, an outlook where we as people come together, Earth, and we're able to be a little bit more, how can I say it? I guess manifestation, a spiritual growth, all those components are coming where perhaps we could enjoy a little bit of human renaissance of some sort and finally propel. And yeah, and you know this. I mean, you know that there's a lot of innovations and a lot of technology that has been kept under wraps for decades. And I think, especially when it comes to the UFO community as well, you know, whether we're going to have disclosure on some of those things, reverse engineering. And so, who knows? I'm hoping that I'm an optimist. What can I say?
Well, I share that optimism, but I also share skepticism. And it's not so much that I think that the government tells us everything. I don't think they do. But you do have to eventually ask a series of binary questions. Like the first binary question is, are there UFOs or not? Well, I think everybody, every country believes that there are because we can see them and they're doing things that our aircraft can't do. So they do exist. So the next binary question is, are they flown by off-worlders or are they flown by races that have lived on this planet for millions of years like we have, and they just don't want to mingle with us? Well, either one of those questions leads us to the next binary question, and that is these beings that are operating these craft, are they working with our governments only? Because they don't work with you and me. They don't come to conferences. They don't make appearances on the news and come out and introduce themselves. So, are they working with our governments or are our governments working with them? And those two answers, yes answers, create very different scenarios. If we're working with them, what are we trading to them for the technology that they're sharing with us?
Well, I think, oh gosh, I forgot his name. Doctor starts with an S, and he's up in Boston. He has that curly whitish hair. I forgot. Anyways, I know that he has said that disclosure, I guess there's a government order or some sort of document that says that as of October 18th, 19th, things are going to be brought out to the light, at least part of it. 25 years and beyond is going to be disclosed to the public, and some of the stuff that is still secret will be leaked in the afterwards for during 7 years or so. I forgot his name. I'm sorry, but yeah, so we'll see. I mean, there's that. I
There have
Brooks.
been lots of Dr. Stephen Greer's, and there have been
No,
all kinds of
it's not him.
Carl Sagans, and there have been all kinds of people like that, but nothing has ever come to fruition.
Right.
So
No,
if we're working with them and they're sharing technology with us, I think they're trading us to them. Governments are trading people to them. But
at
let's
some
ask
point.
the next question. What if they are working with our governments? The implications are very, very different because you have to ask the question, how long do you think they've been here? Well, they've been here for forever, right? So if they're only working with governments, and history seems to show us that they are, what are they doing? Well, they're showing the leaders of governments what they want Earth, how they want Earth managed. So when it comes to everything, distribution of wealth, war, everything comes from these operators of these UFOs. And you only have to go back a little bit in history, like go back to Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus comes to this country, and who does he meet?
Indians or Native American Indians.
Yeah, indigenous people, the Native
Yeah,
Americans, the Indians. And what were they doing on this continent when he got here? They were
they were
killing each
just,
other.
yeah, that's
They
what they
were
were doing.
wiping each other out. The Blackfoot, the Lakota, the Cherokee, the Apache, they were all fighting one another, and they would ride for weeks sometimes to go find another tribe and wipe them out, take everything they have, and take their animals and whatever and take them with them. And the question is, why? Were there not enough buffalo, not enough trout, not enough berries, not enough land? My goodness, they were spread apart by states, regions of this country. So that can't be the reason. If you go into their histories, all their individual histories, you find in every single case, it was their gods that told them to go wipe out the other tribes. And who were their gods? Well, they left us plenty of pictures of them. They're the ETs. They're the ones that are operating those spacecraft.
Yeah, well, that's also happened in South America, and so it is said
Still
that
doing the same thing.
the same thing. It is
Still
said that, yeah,
doing the same thing.
yeah, and one of the stories was that Columbus actually did wipe out one of the tribes because they were sacrificing children, they were sacrificing women, they were sacrificing. It was a sacrificing kind of thing. So, um, you know, he was a Christian, believed to have in God very much so, and so basically he thought he was doing the right thing, and so he was after what do you call it, cannibals and children
Mhm.
sacrificing. So yeah, there's history it says one thing, and also Columbus also said to have seen a siren, as a mermaid, sorry, a mermaid, as well while traveling the waters of the Caribbean. So, who knows? I mean, they've and seen UFOs too, but we'll see. I mean, I think that there's a lot of things happening, which historically speaking, if we go back to what our normal lives were 15 years ago, 20 years ago, um, what we're living right now is really abnormal. And I think you understand what I mean, whether it's our political system right now. I mean, nobody's, I just did a podcast with some friends, and you know I don't see any real races going on any of the state races, congressional senators or anything like that, and yet here we have the Kamala Harris and the Trump. So there's a lot of abnormalities going on. The way that the normal behavior of government itself in the last 3 years is not really what we historically have known. And I have a feeling that between now and 2030, we're going to see some major changes and hopefully a shift to the good. And I know that you're a proponent of humanity rising and consciousness and Christ light and all that. So I'm sure that you're probably looking forward to those kind of changes versus.
Yeah, I would like to see a breakthrough. I mean, yes, we have a stratification in our Earth population. We have a significant number of people on the Earth who are vastly uneducated. They don't know how to read. They don't know how to write. They're not productive. They can't produce anything. And that's just through generations of denial, by their governments of the world, just denying those people opportunities. I mean, the United States of America is the land of opportunity, and everybody on the planet wants to live here because they want to participate in that. They want to become everything they dreamed of being. If not them, then their children. There are factions of the earth, approximately 2% of any society cannot and will not ever obey any laws of society. And unfortunately, some of them are coming as well. So this is an issue that we have, and we're
Yeah.
having to deal with it.
Yeah, and so well, but we have multipolar unions coming up, the BRICS, and many other different scenarios that I think are pointing out because we have been the beacon of hope for many countries in the past. It has been branded as so, and just like Trump says, you know, the whole wide world is watching us, and it's going to be interesting. What kind of cards he's going to pull at the very end of all of this. But I do really think that United States, at least we the people, we are going to stand and carry that beacon of light and hope as it has always been branded. And I think we are that hope. So,
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there is an assumption that goes back anciently in history, and that is there's only so much stuff in the world. There's only so much stuff. And so the top 2%, they control 90%, or they want 90% of the wealth of the world in their hands. So that leaves 98% of the people to share the other 10%. The misnomer or the misconception is that there's only so much stuff. That is not real. There's an unlimited amount of opportunity, of wealth. And the idea that wealth is in the bank is not true. We are the wealth. We are the value on this planet. What we do, what
we
we
are.
think, what we create, that's the value of this planet.
Yeah, and with our own ingenuity and value within, I mean, if we just manifest our own creation, we become bigger than we expect, and we can realize a lot of those, fulfill a very abundant and prosperous life. And I mean prosperous not on money itself. I mean prosperous as far as soul. That's what I mean. And I think that's where we're heading to. I really think that if people we'll see. We'll see. I don't want to say much more, but I know that
Yeah.
there's a renaissance coming out that is going to propel each one of us. So each one of us will be as important and as anybody else, and we'll be able to really manifest those dreams that we always wanted. And it doesn't matter what color you are, if you're rich or poor, you have the same, and you'll have to have those opportunities. And that is what I think is where we're heading at. And with commercialization, I mean, imagine we have space. How big is space? We don't even know. We don't even know. I mean, the cosmos is really big and small at the same time.
It is. And when we look out in space, or when we send our consciousness out into space, we realize two things. One is how small and insignificant we are as an individual in all the points of light of space, but also how incredibly profound we are in the sense that we can imagine all of that. We can perceive time itself. There are no other beings that we know of on this planet that can perceive time. If you don't believe me, go try to teach your dog about tomorrow. It just doesn't work. Because we can perceive time, we can change time. And depending on your intellect, your ability, your bandwidth, I would say, between your ears, the spotlight that you can illuminate in time is quite large, both to the past and to the future.
So the power is all in you and only you. And you can only tap it if you really want to.
Yeah. And once you realize that you could actually put ideas, constructs into the future, and then come back to the past and work those constructs, that's how civilizations are built. That's how houses are built. That's how businesses are built. We go to the future and we imagine it as finished. And then we come back to the past, which is the present, and we start working it until we reach that.
Yeah. Well, Brooks, it's always great to talk to you. And sorry that we are not in your backyard. You're smoking your little cigar, and I have my cup of coffee or whatever, and looking out to the stars and having these kind of conversations. I really enjoy it. But it's really lovely to have you back. And hopefully next time we can then move on to what it is about our own conscious being with remembering the future. Today we talked about your other book that you have, which is Asteroid Mining. What is the title of your book on asteroid?
Asteroid mining, the future of energy.
And you wrote how long ago did you write that?
I wrote that book in 2019.
Not long ago. Well, right at the cusp when you had a lot of these little companies already starting, the private companies were already
Right.
exploring, right? So do you have any projects coming up? Do you have any projects or interest in one of those mining companies at all?
No, I don't have any projects specifically. I kind of retired from professional consulting a year ago. They still call me, but I'm busy working on a house for my son right now. But I did buy
Okay.
stock in one. I bought stock in, I believe it was Rocket Labs, RKLB.
Out
Uh,
of New Zealand, I think.
yeah, well, they recently tested their neutron rocket, which I was really looking forward to this. I thought it was going to blow up, but they went to one of the proving grounds at the Stennis Space Center, which is outside of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I've been there many times. Wonderful facility. I write about the facility in my books. And they tested the engine and it made 102% power and it worked. It functioned. 165,000 pounds of thrust. This is going to be a big
Wow.
boost to large rocket launches, is the neutron rocket. So I bought some stock in the company.
Good. Well, there's definitely commercialization coming up to fruition as far as the space mining and all sorts of other projects outside. So I think it's a new frontier and I think it's going to be fantastic. There's a lot of opportunities over
We
there.
like
So
we like new frontiers.
definitely. Well, thanks so much, Brooks. And you'll come back again, I'm sure.
Wow.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed myself again.